So I find that it can be really hard to accept ourselves. I know it's something I've struggled with. You hear people say all the time, and like I say it all the time, like you're perfect exactly how you are. And at the same time, I think we all have like an innate drive to want to be better, to want to be like the highest version of ourselves. So this gets really like kind of like mucky. It gets confusing because on one hand we have this innate drive to want to be the best version of ourselves. I think culture reinforces that and exacerbates it in a lot of ways because I think that like our culture is constantly pointing out our flaws, all the things that are wrong with us. In a lot of ways, it's like commercials, so they can so people can sell you a solution that gets us thinking that the solution is outside of us. And we get this belief that it's like our innate drive to want to be the best version of ourselves gets hijacked, and we start seeking something outside of us that's going to make us better. So we're always looking to change, to find that next thing, whether it's a new shirt or it's a new workout routine or a new diet or a new whatever. There's always something out there that's going to complete us, that's going to make us better.
Mm-hmm.
But then we come back to like the other side of this paradox is that you're perfect exactly as you are. So it's like, how do we kind of like rectify that paradox and how do we make sense of these? And it's taken me a long time. I feel like it's starting to get a lot more clear for me and make a lot of sense after really struggling with it for a while. But I'm kind of interested to.
Struggling with what?
I struggled a lot with the idea of like almost like trying to convince myself that I'm perfect as I am and that it's just like everything's going to be okay. And at the same time, trying to change myself in a lot of ways. And I think in one big way, like because I've been really into fitness for a long time and like because I'm a coach who like my job is to help people change, which was confusing for me for a while because I'm like I'm working with clients and it's like I want these people to realize that they're perfect. And then also I want them to keep paying me so that they can change. And it's like, and I do believe in the benefits of like exercise and a healthy lifestyle to be better, but it's like kind of took a while to make sense of it and piece it together. I think for me, I made like self-development a part of my identity. And then it's like when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Like I started in order for self-development to be part of my identity, I needed to constantly be fixing things about myself. So for like myself to feel complete, I needed problems. You can't be a problem solver if you don't have problems. So there's like this flip side of the coin where I would need to either like hang on to problems and not fully solve them or keep creating new problems. So I had something to work on and something to fix and something to change, and got into this sort of like perpetual cycle of not believing I was good enough because I found value in the like attempts to make myself good enough.
Yeah. It's almost as though there are parts of us that need something to be wrong because that in and of itself fills a need. And it's like that part of us needs to feel insecure, unworthy, not good enough, or always needs to be fixing because that's what that part is used to.
Yeah.
And I'm using the word that part because I really tried to pay attention to the language that I cultivate. And there's all these parts of us because on one hand, I could not agree more with you. I'm constantly trying to fix myself. But I also have to understand that the part of me that's whole and in its perfect state is in its perfect state, but it's also observing these other parts that have self-sabotage dialogue or constant need to develop and become part of that other aspect that's already complete. And it's been challenging really, really challenging for me to accept the parts of me that I deem unworthy or that I deem need to be fixed, because that's what I've adhered to and agreed to my whole life.
Yeah.
And kind of what you're saying, I believe most people do that, and we do it unconsciously.
Yeah. And I think it's like a big, like you mentioned, language. And I think language is a huge part of it, and sort of like the words that we use to describe ourselves and describe life and describe the process. And that plays a huge role in it. I want to get into that. And I think another big part of it is this idea that there's something outside of us that's going to complete us.
Yes.
And that like even if that thing that's outside of us is sort of like an ideal version of us, there's that projection of it into the future, where right now, if I have an ideal of myself in the future that someday I'm going to be, then that implies that the version of myself I am right now isn't enough. And what I've kind of come to realize is when you hold that idea of yourself in the present moment of not enough, all you can create in the future is more not enoughness. Where it's like, rather, I say all the time, it's about becoming the version of yourself who is capable of achieving your goals, not projecting that version into the future, but becoming it right now. Because then it's like the blooming of that, once you embody it, is what actually becomes that version of you in like manifest form. And it's something that you can kind of like observe in nature. I think a really good example of this is an acorn. And it's like within an acorn is an entire oak tree. But if you just put that acorn on your kitchen counter and just leave it there, you'll have an acorn forever. Every time you come back, it's just going to look the exact same. It's like, well, nothing's changing. And it's like, that's the same as if I were to have an ideal of myself projected into the future. Like someday I'm going to be an oak tree. Someday I'm going to look this way, act this way, feel this way. I'm going to have all my dreams are going to come true. Everything's going to be perfect in the future. But right now I'm not that, and I'm not enough. So like right now I'm just the acorn. And if every day if you come back and it's just an acorn sitting on the counter. Because in order for that acorn, or in order for that oak tree to emerge out of that acorn, there's certain like environmental requirements. It needs to be in soil. It needs sunlight and water and whatever other nutrients in order for the intention of that seed to become its tree, to like actualize the potential that already exists within it. The acorn doesn't need to do anything. It doesn't need to go out and change itself into an oak tree. It just needs to be in the right environment so that the oak tree emerges of its own volition, which is a really cool way of looking at our own lives, because like within me exists that ideal, that potential. But if I can put myself in the proper environment, and I think a part of that is sort of like embracing the perfection of who I am right now, then that potential has a chance to emerge from within me. And it's a completely different way of looking at everything and of experiencing life and experiencing myself and my goals and my intentions. And I think that's sort of like the breakthrough that I've had somewhat recently. that's really helped me to like understand.
I love this analogy. You brought it to my attention, and it's so good. I said, did you think of it?
I think I did. Like obviously people talked about seeds and
or
plants and
similar
whatever.
things.
Yeah,
But also, what comes to mind as you said it so eloquently is this is the definition of how we're all one. It is that, right? It's that potential. It's the divine essence at the core of each of us for the manifest divine to express as and through us. And either way, whether that acorn becomes an oak tree or not, it's perfect.
yes,
right?
Exactly.
So
it's nothing that the acorn could have done differently. The acorn was just being a perfect acorn.
Yes, but the potential is seated within it.
Yes.
It's also seated within all of us, right? We don't see it necessarily, but it's the gut feelings that we get. It's the intuitive hits. I always talk about those whispers of wisdom that come from our heart that aren't spoken. It's just an inner knowingness. That's the potential that's seated within all of us to become the oak trees that we are. And I think that that's what you're talking about when you say expressing as our highest self.
So that's exactly what I meant when I said before that we all have like an innate drive to be the highest expression of ourselves. And it's there, like we get those feelings. Like we know when we're not living up to our potential. We know when we're not in alignment with who we are. And those kind of urges and needs can be, like I said in the beginning, like hijacked as you're not good enough. You need to change. You need to be like this other person. You need to like fit in, copy people. And that gets kind of confusing where there's like this idea of, so like we might have an urge, like, okay, I could be better. And then you start almost like flipping through a magazine. I don't know if people still do that, but like the image makes sense to me. Like you're flipping through a magazine or you're looking at social media and you see like models and you see people who look great and look like they have everything. It's like, that's what I want to be. And then if you try to like copy and mimic that, you're going to be out of alignment with who you are, because what you're actually doing is like pushing more of yourself into the shadow and trying to just focus on certain aspects of yourself that you can project to the world to appear more like somebody else who you want to be like. But when we're able to like fully embrace all of us, all of ourselves, and all the different parts, like you alluded to before, that there's all these different aspects of us that bring kind of different skills and different benefits to the table. When we're able to like embrace the perfection of all of those and like integrate them into ourselves, we can start sort of like unlocking the gifts that are within all those unique parts of ourselves and become more of ourselves. Because I think that's really what the drive is. It's not necessarily to be a better version of myself. It's to be more of myself, to be like the perfect expression of the essence of me. And you can't be, I could never be the perfect expression of myself if there's parts of myself I'm hiding and trying to keep from being seen. So like we put things in the shadow. And this is kind of another part of, I was saying before, when I made becoming like self-improvement part of my identity. And I think I've talked about it before on the show, like when we were doing a lot of like shadow work, and like we have for years. And I think it took me a really long time to realize that the entire goal of shadow work wasn't to like get rid of the shadow. It was to stop hiding it and to like just shine light on it and embrace it. And when you have those parts of yourself that are like hard to love and that you don't want anyone else to know about, and you learn to accept it and love it and bring it into the light with the rest of you, then it has the opportunity to flourish And then you can become more of yourself because you're not hiding away as much of yourself. But that was really hard for me. For years, it was like, okay, like this is my shadow. I'm going to get rid of it. And rather than have this in the shadow and in the background, I'm just going to like cut it away, and I'll just only be the parts of myself that I like. And that did not work, because when you try to eliminate the shadow, it just gets stronger and stronger, and you become more and more polarized. And when you're really polarized, you're like out of balance and out of alignment.
Yes. What you're describing so beautifully is the epitome of getting to know ourselves and getting to know our shadow, because I, for so long, didn't even realize I had a shadow.
Yeah.
Everybody in this world has a shadow. We live in the third dimension. I think a big part of our human journey is to uncover our shadow parts and bring light to them and to accept them fully. It's been challenging, but it helps you discover who you actually are and what you've repressed and what you've been told or observed what not to do and what to do instead. And like you said, then we begin copying it.
Yeah.
And then we're all just copies of each other. I mean, then where's the uniqueness? Where's the creativity? Where's the imagination and inspiration? You do one thing differently from your friends group or your family, your religious community, your schooling, your coworkers, and you're deemed weird or strange, or what are you doing? I mean, how many times do people call us that? And it really bothered me at the beginning, because so much of what this life tells us all is to be the same and to do as everybody else does. So the minute that you're characterized as weird, boom, there you go. Uh-oh, I've got to repress this. I'm putting it back in the shadow. And it's hard. It's a continuation of discovering, hiding, rediscovering. It's you bring parts to light, like your shadow parts to light, and then there's still some that are very much buried back there that slowly want to peek their head up.
Yeah. And it's like, the more we judge those parts of ourselves, the more they like show up in our life, the more we see it, the more we experience it. And I think that the more we judge parts of ourselves, the more we feel like we're being judged when we go out into the world. Like it makes it like more and more uncomfortable, because you feel like everybody's looking at that part of yourself, or everybody like sees it and is judging it, but it's in fact like it was you judging it the whole time, and you're just projecting that out. But yeah, like I think just learning to allow yourself to be yourself.
Yes.
And I guess at the same time, allowing other people to be themselves.
Yeah. And I mean, really, let's be honest. The deeper question is, who are you really?
Yeah.
I'm still figuring it out.
Right. Yeah.
But if you were to ask, like, any one of my family or friends, they could tell you right away who I am, because I've projected something that I believed was going to be loved and accepted, or familiar to them.
Yeah.
But it's like, I actually don't know if I like these things, or if I don't, if I act this way because of that. It's every action helps me better understand if I'm operating as my true self, or if I'm operating in shadow, and that shadow is not the true identity of who I actually am. Not that I'm trying to repress it. It's just allowing me to ask the deeper question, what this part, why does it feel it can't express to the truth of my being? And I think for most of the time, I didn't even know that I wasn't being true to myself.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like what you're talking about, is that potential that's within us. We're never really taught that it's there. when we're copying,
Yeah.
or when we're not in an environment that's out of the ordinary or different than how we grew up.
Yeah. When you said like every action allows you, every action allows you to see where, like, if you're being authentic to yourself.
If I'm operating in shadow, or if it's
Yeah.
my true nature.
Yeah, meaning like how you feel every time you do something. Like I'm just curious how you kind of tell if you're being authentic or not.
Whew. Yes, feeling is a big part of it. Like if this feels true to the sense of self that I'm developing, or does it feel right because I don't want to hurt someone else's feelings, or I don't want a confrontation, or I don't want to be judged. If I'm doing something and then because I'm fearing that I'm going to be judged if I do the opposite, then I know that that's a part of my shadow that hasn't been integrated yet.
Gotcha.
But instead of trying to change it, I'm just asking the deeper question. All right, I was too afraid to say what I actually wanted to say, to do what I wanted to do. Let's figure out why. This part of you that felt the need to not express fully or not express to the truth, like, all right, that's my shadow. Like it's an illusion of myself. So how can I better or deeper understand the wounds of that shadow? And instead of, you can't really just like push your shadow into the light like that. That's an identity and ego crisis. I mean, that for me, that's severe anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a people pleaser, as a yes person, it's really hard for me to set boundaries. A lot of times I still say yes when I don't want to do things. So that's a shadow aspect of me, but there's different parts of that shadow.
It's like every time it happens, you get a little bit more aware of it, a little bit more, a little more understanding, a little bit more like you get a new question to ask yourself.
Which in turn just helps me, again, like I said, to have a better and deeper understanding of who I actually am. I'm still meeting this higher version of Elise. Elise has been playing very small her whole life. Not so grateful for everything that she's done, but she's been in survival mode for 36 years, and I'm just coming out of it now. So I'm being very gentle, incorporating all of these aspects and these parts of me that show up at different times and in different conversations. There's probably like 7 Elises that have shown up in the 20 minutes we've been recording. And I continuously try to observe and accept the parts. It's the acceptance that's hard, because exactly how you started off, we're continuously trying to fix, develop. And I too, on this self-development journey, have tried everything, changed numerous times, needed to do more, work harder. And I think I said to you a couple weeks ago, if it wasn't a month ago, I compared it to almost the Catholic religion, where it's like you never feel good enough as a Catholic. You never feel like you always have to do things for other people. Like you came into this world as a sin. Like you in my opinion, excuse me, I want to make it very clear. Like that's how I felt growing up that way. But I've obviously don't identify as a Catholic or a Christian any longer. However, I feel like I've now put myself into a spiritual religion where I'm constantly feeling not good enough and constantly trying to self-develop and initiate myself and integrate. And it's all these things. And I said to her, I was like, I'm exhausted. I'm so tired of changing and working on myself. Then I think that's probably what I needed at that point, right?
Absolutely.
And I think maybe what you're describing is the same. We get to this point, it's like, I think what I want to work on most is just accepting myself and seeing what parts show up at different times to understand their needs. For so long, the inner dialogue within my head was, why are you acting this way? Don't act that way. Why are you thinking this way? Don't think that way. You have to think this way. So didn't need to be, talked out loud, but that was what was going on in my head.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly changing every single one of these parts of me. But like I said, I was doing it unconsciously, and I thought that here I am trying to be great and become the best version of myself. And it's like, but the environment within me still wasn't conducive for that.
Yeah.
Light bulb moment. I mean,
You're doing all these things to improve your life and feeling worse and worse.
Yes.
And it's like that's how I think the ego can hijack something like self-development or spirituality or even religion in a lot of ways to like get you stuck in these cycles of feeling worse and worse about yourself because you're constantly comparing yourself to an ideal that doesn't exist. In the same way that like if that acorn were to compare itself to an oak tree, it would never be enough. Because it would like for years, like you have an acorn, and then you have like this little sapling that breaks through the ground, and then it like slowly grows over years and years and years. But if it was just looking around, like, oh, look at those like 100-foot tall trees, I could never live up to that. Like, it would be miserable for its entire existence. It would be miserable, even though at each stage of its development, it's the perfect expression of the essence of that oak tree as it develops. And that's exactly what you're describing as like going through this sort of like process of learning about and developing like spiritual practices. They're never going to be perfect, but that's the perfection. Like that's what's perfect about it, is that they're imperfectly, or they're like perfectly imperfect. It's you. It's like the perfect expression of you with all your flaws and all your programming and conditioning and every experience you've had. And it's getting better and it's changing. And every time you mess up, it's an opportunity to learn something else about yourself, because that's the only way that growth happens. So when we're comparing ourselves to the ideal version that has already grown, that can't exist without the problems and missteps and mistakes. So it's like embracing the problems and missteps and mistakes, because that's the catalyst for growth, and that's how we're actually becoming. That is the perfect expression of who we are and what we are becoming.
Yeah, it's really, we get in our own way.
Yeah, right?
That really is, yes, our ego, exactly as you were saying, that part of us that really has aided in the development of us from a very young age and has kept us in a box, an idea of who we thought we needed to be. Of course, it doesn't want to be challenged or that it's wrong. And exactly, it kind of it continuously wants you to believe that you're separate from all of these things and all of these parts, and you're not. They are it's no, it's not. You're not separate. You're not separate from anything.
Yeah. And as you said before, like that potential within us is also the proof of the oneness that we all share. So of course the ego is going to do anything it can to keep us from recognizing that and accepting it and embracing it, because that's sort of like the end of the line for the ego in a lot of ways, or at least the way that the ego perceives reality. So I was thinking before, like change, and especially like the fear around change, but like just the concept of change in and of itself is only the ego could believe in that, because only the ego is tied to linear time. So like our higher self can look at the entire perspective of like of our entire life and be like, oh, well, obviously that's the perfect step to there, because that's just how it happens. It's like if we're halfway up a staircase, we wouldn't think like this stair is wrong. Like it's just one of the steps to get to the top, and they all exist together. But the ego would be like, another, I can't believe it's another step. You're doing this wrong. You should be going faster. You should be doing 2 steps at a time. What's wrong with you? But that's not how staircases work. Like the stairs are all there like as one whole thing. Like if our life is a staircase and each obstacle that we face is a step that we need to get over so that we have the opportunity to get to the next one, then they're all perfect. But only the ego that's stuck in like this idea of linear time and survival and like we need to be perfect is going to, it's like it's this weird idea of like we have to change, but don't change too much, only change just enough to realize that you need to keep changing. And it's like that's kind of like the paradox I was saying before, where it's like we are absolutely perfect exactly as we are, but we still like there's growth to happen, and the ego can just kind of get in there and confuse things.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this with ourselves, and I think we were talking to, I think in the last episode when we were speaking with Meg, change is really scary, but the underlying question, I think she asked and said it, we were just talking about it, like, is anyone truly happy with their lives?
Yeah.
And we all said no, but also talking to other people, they're not happy. So something's missing, right? Something's wrong. And typically we think that it's outside of us that's going to make it better or happier or things like that. So that's exactly what I just wanted to bring a little bit more light in, that it's the changes come from within. Changing the outside environment can be very beneficial to give a new perspective to maybe some values or patterns or habits of yours that are not serving your highest and greatest good. But the work is always internal, and there's nothing outside of you that's going to give you what's already in you. You just have to realize that it's you, that you are the power to unleash it. And I think that too kind of was a little bit almost like I didn't want to believe it, because I wanted to continuously play the victim. Think that the outside circumstances were happening to me and not for me. But yeah, I'm just kind of reiterating again that within this realm and reality, there's nothing outside of us that's going to change us if we don't change ourselves.
Yeah, it's always an internal job, and it's sort of like I'll keep coming back to this idea of the acorn, because in order for the oak tree to emerge from the acorn, it needs certain conditions to be right. So I said that before, like it needs soil, it needs sunlight, it needs and humans, like we do also need environmental things. So like we do need like clean water and healthy food, and we need shelter and we need sunlight. And so like once we have like these really, really basic things in order to like stay alive, any of the thriving is all going to be internal.
Yes.
Any aspect, like our own personal evolution, our evolution in consciousness, our evolution as a being, is all an internal process. There's nothing outside of us that's going to fix us or complete us. It's all going to happen from within. It's the patterns within us, is our thought patterns. It's the quality of our thoughts is what's going to become manifest in the world. I think a really good, like a visual example of this, if people have ever seen like cymatics videos. I love these. It's like the coolest thing. It's cool. Where you watch like people, there'll be like a plate with sand on it, like a thin layer of sand or some other material that vibrates at a certain frequency. And as it vibrates, all the sand particles align themselves in certain geometric formations. And depending on what the frequency is, the sand disperses itself differently. So it'll be, if it stays at a steady frequency, it'll be the same shape. As soon as the frequency changes, all the sand like disperses and goes crazy. It goes everywhere, and then it reforms as soon as there's another coherent pattern. It comes in, and the higher the frequency is, the more complex the shape is, which is it's an example of evolution. And it's like, as we raise our frequency, as we raise our consciousness, the pattern can become more complex, more beautiful, more elegant, more exciting. But it's nothing, there's nothing outside of it that's happening. It's just, this is just how the matter materializes in the presence of that frequency. But if you look at, so if we were to vibrate one of the plates at like a low frequency and it just makes like a circle, but we're like, well, I don't want to be a circle. I want something really exciting. I want to make a hexagram or whatever, some sort of shape. And you just start pushing the sand around and trying to force it to be a way other than what it is, what the frequency is as you push that sand across the plate, as soon as you move your hand, the sand's just going to go right back to the same pattern. And if you keep pushing it, you can work really, really hard, and maybe you can even get it into some sort of form that's like, this is what I want to project to the world. But as soon as you move your hands, it just goes right back to what it is. And that's how we are. We can't project an image to the world forever if what's inside of us is a different frequency. Eventually, who we are on the inside is what's going to be presented. It's what we are. But if we go inside, if we work on ourselves and we change the patterns and the frequencies that are within us, then the entire outside world changes. How we are, how we present ourselves, how we are expressed in the world is completely different. And it's, as you go through the stages of like going like 1 hertz to like 2 hertz, 3 hertz, 4, as the frequency elevates and goes up and up and up, and the patterns get more and more complex, they're always perfect. And there'll be imperfections along the way or whatever, but they're perfect. They're a perfect expression of the frequency. And as the frequency raises, it changes, but it's equally perfect. And that's what we are. It's like we're halfway, we're a quarter of the way through the process, wherever we are in our life, whatever we're going through, we are the perfect expression of what we are. And in order for that to change, the change takes place on the inside. And it's like exactly what you were saying before. It's that getting to know yourself. It's being aware of what's happening and realizing like, oh, okay, like I reacted in a way that I am not proud of. Why did I react that way? What payoff did I get from my reaction? What did I benefit from being like angry or mean? Like, and really figuring out like, oh, there's a part of me that's still a sad child who doesn't feel seen by his parents or got picked on in school or something, that is still hasn't been loved and embraced in the way that it needs to be. So it's there and it's lingering and we lash out because that's our pattern. That's the pattern. That's what's actually being expressed in the sand on the dish. It's not what we want it to be. We can keep pushing those edges in, but eventually you're going to react to the frequency that's there, not to what we want the frequency to be.
I love it. Yes, absolutely. And this is what I feel I went on a little bit of a tangent when I said most people aren't happy within their lives, but I didn't close it because
sorry.
Thought. No. It came to me now. That was me. That, and I think it was probably you too. I don't want to speak for you, but everything looked great on the outside, which is what we were saying. It's what you're saying. You're projecting something that's not necessarily true. So I am like miserable inside of me, but I'm putting a smile on my face. I keep buying clothes. I keep eating all this food to make me feel better. I keep excessively working out to make sure that like my body looks all right, because internally I'm dying and there's chaos and I'm miserable. And then I think it was like one day I just was like, fuck, this is not working. And I think that that's a catalyst that most people have to embrace, that nothing outside of you is going to make you feel better.
Yeah.
And I think, like, right, like you're saying, you can't move the sand.
Right, yeah.
You can't just add some more or take a little bit away. There's underlying patterns that must be changed to reflect what's going on.
Yes. Along the lines of the cymatics analogy, if you've ever watched these videos where it does change from one frequency to another, there's also always a pattern of what looks like chaos. It doesn't go, they don't uniformly like get in line and move from one pattern to another. It goes from one pattern to sand everywhere with like seemingly no pattern at all, just completely spread out mess. And then as the frequency of the plate gets more and more coherent, it realigns itself in a new pattern, which I think is just also important to note that like as we change and as we're on this progression, it's not as simple as like going upstairs, like I said before, on this linear, like one step, then the next, then the next. Sometimes it feels like absolute destruction in between steps, and you have no idea like what's up and what's down, and you're completely lost. But then when you do kind of stay true to yourself and embrace all the parts of yourself and love yourself and understand that everything is happening for the greater benefit, the new pattern that emerges is more beautiful and more elegant and more complex than anything you could have imagined. If you were trying to like copy something and force it, you would never be able to get the sand into as beautiful and unique a pattern as the essence of you and like your perfect expression. So I just want people to keep in mind that it's not always going to be easy and beautiful and like clear what's happening. Like you were saying before, like you don't know yourself. And I want to like reiterate that. Like I have a vision in mind of like who I would like to be. And I don't know if that's what I'm ever gonna be. I feel like it is because I feel like I do have like a deep connection to like my higher self. But I don't know how to get there. I just have to trust that that process is what's taking place by expressing myself as fully as I can, as I am now, like with my flaws and with my shortcomings and with my limitations, and just embrace it. Be like, okay, this is me perfectly at this step. And I just put my faith in knowing that the next step is going to be the next step that I need, rather than trying to create it myself, because I don't know what's best for me. I just know how to like sort of act on my own kind of intuition and like trust myself and trust the universe.
Surrender.
And surrender for sure. Yeah. So yeah, surrender does not mean give up.
No.
Surrender is so much more powerful than giving up. It means like stop forcing it and trying to pretend you're controlling.
Yes, it's getting out of your own way, like I said before. And that probably sounds a little bit strange. Like, how do you get out of your own way? Well, don't you find, I'm asking this for you, don't you find it so hard to put words to something you just know how to do? And that's what I'm trying to do here. I don't necessarily know how to explain this. And for those listening that think I'm crazy with this word, when you know, you know. Like I can't.
Like capital K.
Yes.
No.
Wait, like you have to get out of your own way. Like the little you has to get out of the bigger you's way, that higher aspect of you. But our little us, the little you, it tries to control it and says, okay, no, like we're just going to continue doing this, or nope, that's too difficult. Not going to like it.
Yeah. It's knowing in the same way that the acorn knows how to become an oak tree.
Yeah.
It's like just be there. It's like knowing that it's like, okay, if I'm just here in this soil, something cool is going to happen, and trusting that that's okay, rather than like pretending that you know what's best for yourself,
Mm.
or knowing what the next thing is and knowing exactly what to do, or other, like, not copying other people and not trying to limit yourself to just mimicking somebody else, but like being true to your own uniqueness.
Absolutely. And it's allowing yourself to mess up
Yeah.
gracefully, because exactly you're saying, we don't necessarily know the next steps. Okay, I know, or I have an idea that I need to do this workout, or I need to talk to this person, I need to set this boundary, or I need to move, I need to change careers, I need to
Mhm.
break this relationship, I need to be a different gender, whatever it may be. If you feel that that's the next step, take it. If it's not the highest step in this path of evolution for yourself, you'll be redirected. It won't
Mhm.
work out. Something else happens, a roadblock hits. That's not necessarily a bad thing. You're like, okay, all right, let's redirect again. What else is going to come? What do I think is the next best step?
Mhm.
And if you take another left turn and it's not the highest, you'll be redirected. Like, the universe doesn't make mistakes
Yeah.
at all. Our higher selves don't. So if we are ever on the wrong path, and I'm using wrong in
Right.
quotations here, there isn't a wrong. It's you're going to be redirected, or something doesn't work out. You've said to me so many times, because I get embarrassed a little bit, there's this part of my shadow that I've gone through so many jobs and so many iterations, and then like I'm afraid to say that to people, like, I failed at this, I didn't do this, and you constantly remind me that it's not a fail, it was a redirect. What you needed and required to learn at that time, you did, and then
Mhm.
you're taking it with you. You didn't stay that path because it wasn't in alignment with your highest purpose, but you got what you needed. Maybe it was perfect as it was, even though it only lasted 1 year or 2 years or 5 years, as opposed to 70 years. And which I, in my opinion, I the only constant is change. Think of those
Mhm.
people who have stayed the same for that long, like, those are the ones that are probably itching to have the truest expression of themselves come into fruition.
Yeah. It's sort of like what I was saying before about like change, and like the ego thinks that it needs to control change from like the linear aspect. But when you surrender that need to control the way that things are going to go, everything works out. And well, I was going to say, like, with the ego is also the part that is labeling things as good and bad, right and wrong. So the ego might get in your head, like you leave a job for another job, and it's getting in your head like, oh, that was a waste of time, or that was a failure, or you didn't do that well. But no, it's exactly what you said. It's you got what you needed, and then it was time to take the next step. In the same way that, like, if you're stuck in traffic, maybe it seems like it's a bad thing, but you don't know that if there wasn't a traffic jam that day and you were driving faster, that you would have gotten an accident. So like we don't know all the things that the mistakes and the problems in our life actually save us from that could have been so much worse.
Yes. This is were you gonna do you want to continue the statement, or were you
No,
done
no,
with
that's
that?
fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring this up kind of when you were giving the analogy of people flipping through a magazine, which I love. And you're trying to look like, oh, this person has a beautiful body, or oh my gosh, I want this pair of pants, or this
Mhm.
new purse, or this hairstyle I love. This has been a really fun exercise and observation of mine, because I don't necessarily look through magazines anymore. I do sometimes, but like I love scrolling through
Mhm.
Pinterest, and social media
It
is a
would have
great
been a
resource.
better example earlier. Pinterest.
um, but yes, I get fixated on, either an outfit or someone's hair or
Hmm.
something, and I immediately think to myself, okay, is this something that I really do truly like, or do I like it because my friends like it, or my family would like it, or society told me to like it? That's a really great exercise to figure out.
Yeah.
Body is probably a very good example. Like, okay, I think that this person is beautiful. She's thin and skinny. Like, okay, that's amazing. Do you truly believe that? And do you think that she wouldn't be beautiful if she was 15 pounds heavier? Because typically it's society's construct of the perfect body that makes us believe we're unworthy or not enough because of the way we look if it's not exactly like the portrait of a model or person or whoever it may be.
I love that. I want to actually add another aspect to it. When you see a picture of somebody and it's like they look great, and we assume like, oh, okay, like it's probably the outfit or like whatever it is, and then we like want to get that. Is it the shirt that we liked, or is it that this person in the picture is expressing themselves?
Yes, that's a good one.
Well, we think it's like, oh, rather than expressing myself, I'll just copy. That's what I was trying to say before. Like we copy people instead. It's like you see somebody wearing a shirt and it's like a unique shirt and they look like they're just like owning themselves and just like, I'm having a good day. I'm feeling myself. Look at me in this shirt. And it looks so natural and cool. So it's like, oh, I'll buy that shirt. And then you buy the same shirt and you're like, I look stupid. Why did I buy this shirt? And you never wear it. It's because it wasn't the shirt. It was the person just being true to themselves and expressing themselves.
The energy. I love that. Yes, it can be both. A picture has 1,000 words. I want to rephrase that. A picture has 1,000 questions to ask yourself about yourself. Yes, and that's what I'm finding really encouraging as opposed to discouraging, because I used to look at pictures and be, oh, woe is me. I don't have the money. I don't have this shirt. I don't look that way. I'm not as thin. I've mentioned this before, which is why I had to stop watching reality TV. It was making me feel worse about myself than empowering myself. But exactly like you said, yes. How many people do I know that has the closet's chock full of clothes they never wear? Exactly. Or they've got 6 cars they only drive. It's all of that. That's all external things.
Because they're chasing something outside of them that's actually within themselves. I cut you off there.
No,
but it's like that's what it is. Like you see that picture of the person who looks really cool, or you just see someone who's like, that person's cool. I want to be like them. Being like them isn't copying their mannerisms or their language or their clothes or their style. Being like them is expressing yourself equally and being like, yeah, I want to be like that person. I'm going to be me as hard as I can. I'm going to like really fully embrace me and become more of myself because that's what's cool. And then people see you being more of yourself and it inspires them to be more of themselves because that's what we all actually want. Like that's what the drive is. The drive within us is to evolve by being more of ourselves, to actualize the potential that's within us. And like we all have so much like infinite potential. Like we are all incredible. And we waste it looking everywhere outside of ourselves and then using everything around us to judge ourselves. And it's like we're infinite potential that we're like, this isn't enough. Give me that. And then I'll be, oh, and then that doesn't do it. And then they give me that. And it's like just embracing this. And that's really like what I've learned lately.
It's the epitome also of the deep life.
Yeah.
It is digging deep down to understand who we truly are. And it's a transformation that's really exciting to undergo. I mean, I'm looking forward to each day that I learn something new or get to develop something new or find out something different and be different.
Yeah, I wanted to say before, you just said transformation.
Yeah.
And I wanted to point out, like, this is this has been on my mind like the entire episode, and I don't think I ever actually said it, but change and transformation are two different things. And what we're talking about here is transformation. And transformation is from within. Transformation is how a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. It doesn't change itself. It doesn't be like, oh, I need to go get some wings, or like it doesn't even like it's not a caterpillar doesn't slowly grow wings over time, because a butterfly isn't a caterpillar with wings. A caterpillar like goes into like just gets an urge one day to like, I don't know what's going on. Life was good, but like something, it feels like I need to go build a cocoon and be alone for a while. And it goes and it builds a cocoon and it goes in there and it literally like melts. Like a caterpillar, it doesn't go in there and sprout wings. It goes in there and like melts into itself, becomes like a goo, and then that goo, just like the sand on the cymatics plate, it completely disperses, and then it comes back together in a completely new formation at a higher frequency. That's transformation. Transformation is just like letting go and surrendering and allowing the thing that is within you to emerge of its own volition and just become out of what was there before. And I think that is the difference. That's why we don't need to change ourselves. We need to accept and embrace ourselves and allow ourselves to transform.